News Talk 94.5 WPTI, 96.7 FM WTOB. You're listening to the Wealth Guardian Show with Doug, Brice, and Garrett, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. In the studio this morning, you have Brice Payne and Garrett Ray. And this morning, we're going to talk about factors that matter to your retirement other than your account value. Good morning, Brice. How are you?
Good morning, Garrett. I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing all right, sir.
Very
Doing
good.
okay.
How's the little one?
Little one is good. He, just he just celebrated, I guess, his 4-month birthday, if that's a thing. But yeah, all the doctor's visits and shots and all that stuff. So
Got that out of the way.
got that out of the way. That's
deal.
right.
Good deal. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining Garrett and myself here in the Wealth Guardian studio this morning. We're going to discuss, what is it, Garrett? Factors.
Yeah, factors that matter to your retirement other than your account value.
Perfect.
When people get focused on the account value, we're going to talk about things that also factor into your retirement and get less focused on just the account value here.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're going to cover that in both segments today, the first and segment. And let's go ahead and do our Wealth Guardian service salute as we do every weekend morning, Garrett.
Yeah, we just want to take a moment of our time to recognize our men and women in uniform and, of course, our community first responders, our policemen, firefighters, EMTs, all of you guys out there who your job is to keep our community and our country safe. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We know that oftentimes you guys do not get the thanks that you deserve, and we just want to take a moment to thank you and your families.
Absolutely. And I will second that here on my end of the table. All right. Garrett, you know that we take another second before we get into the meat of the program to ask ourselves a question so that everybody out there can better get to know their Wealth Guardians advisor, just to show everybody that we're real people just like them. And the question we're going to ask ourselves today, not a particularly exciting one, but what is your favorite cuisine? Not like food, but cuisine in general, whether a region of the world or a particular country. What's yours of choice?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it'd have to be Asian food in general. When I was in the Navy, I spent the first 2 years living in Okinawa, Japan. And I got really kind of immersed in the culture there, shopped at like Japanese grocery stores and everything, and really just enjoyed the cuisine and the food there. I mean, amazing seafood. So yeah, I'd have to say Asian food.
Asian. All right. Very good. I would go with anything Latin American, Mexican, Cuban, that kind of thing. Just throw it on a tortilla and I will eat it. Love that to each of the world. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with Italian food or some others as well, but I would not put Asian at the top of my list by any means, but it is my wife. Belle is definitely into the Asian food as well. All right. Well, everybody out there, ask yourself that same question. What is your favorite cuisine? And hey, American hamburgers and hot dogs counts as well. All right. So let's get into the program here, Garrett. I imagine a lot of people out there have spent decades building up their investment accounts. They've monitored the markets and they've contributed to their 401ks. And that's great. But here's the truth. You're really not ready to retire if that is all that you've done. Retirement planning isn't just about the portfolio, as we know. It's about a lot more than that. And so on today's episode, both the first and second segment, we're going to dive into all the non-investment decisions that can make or break your retirement.
Yep.
So let's jump into this first one, Garrett. Lifestyle.
Yeah. I mean, as you had mentioned kind of in the introduction there, so many people get focused on managing their accounts, whether they have a 401k, IRAs, brokerage accounts, and they're really, really focused on that. And they think they've done a lot of the heavy lifting. And in some ways that's true. But when we talk about retirement, I guess we hear this phrase kind of thrown about pretty commonly that, when I retire, I'm likely to find myself in a lower tax bracket. And that may or may not be the case. Most people, we tend to find, don't really want to change their lifestyle too much when they retire. They want to kind of keep the lifestyle and the spending habits that they had when they were in their working years and continue those into their retirement years. Well, if you're going to be spending like you were when you were working in your retirement, you're likely not going to find yourself in a lower tax bracket. You could, in fact, find yourself in a higher tax bracket without some careful planning. So lifestyle creep, general, spending habits. Most people, particularly in their early part of their retirement, they have a desire to travel, whether that's going to see kids, grandkids, or they're going to finally take that trip to Italy and go see the vineyards and all that stuff. We hear a lot of desire to travel. We've got, clients that like to do RVing or motorcycling.
We do have a share of those, yes.
Yeah. So they've picked up some hobbies and some habits that can cost money. So basically going through your general spending patterns and understanding what are we spending today and what do we really want to do in retirement. There's nothing wrong with it per se. It's just having to plan for it, understand, okay, well, how does this translate to how much money am I going to have to give myself from my accounts that I've saved up? And what does that distribution to me every month look like in order to accomplish the goals that I have in retirement?
There you go. Perfect. If we could use an analogy for this, I know that when Doug was raising you, I'm sure he showed you a little bit of the ins and outs of how an automobile works.
Sure.
And if you, as my stepfather did for me, and if we can liken that you're getting ready for a trip, all right, you've put gas in the car. Mm-hmm. That's my analogy would be that's you having saved for retirement, and you're going to take a trip now. Well, just because you've got gas in the car, that alone doesn't mean that you're going to get to your destination. There's other things that you have to maintain, if you will, or check. And I would say what you just talked about, knowing your spending habits, is kind of looking at the plan. Which routes are we going to take, and what are the speed limits on those routes? And is there a congested point? Is there a way around that congested point or whatnot? So there's the analogy for the day that Brice will use. I will for the lifestyle is getting to understand what your spending is going to be. And it's not just I spend X amount of dollars and we'll adjust that for inflation, but that's what it's going to be throughout retirement. Now, there's going to be higher points of spending. There's going to be lower points of spending. And the more we can define that, the more accurately we can pinpoint, if you can, when expenses are going to go down or when they're going to go up. An easy example is your mortgage might fall off if you've already retired, but you're still paying your mortgage. It's probably going to fall off at a certain point during your retirement. Well, then your expenses would go down at that point, right?
Yeah.
So that's that first one, lifestyle. All right. Well, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Wealth Guardian Show with Doug Ray. And in the studio this morning, you're listening to Brice and Garrett talking about factors other than your retirement accounts that play into retirement planning. And the second one we want to talk about here, Garrett, is Social Security, one of the more important topics when it comes to retirement planning.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Social Security, it's going to be a cornerstone of almost everyone's retirement. Now, for a lot of folks, Social Security is not going to cover your full expenses, kind of touching on what we covered earlier. But it is, particularly if we're talking about a couple that, maybe he has his own standalone benefit, she has her own standalone benefit. More than likely, there's some amount of age gap in any marriage, but a year or two here or there. When does one spouse start benefits? When does the other spouse start benefits? Do you have to start at the same time? Oftentimes, that's not the right answer, at least if you want to get the mathematical calculation of the most amount of money you could get under Social Security. And so, we help people navigate that. And our approach is that we're going to help answer that mathematical question for you, particularly if we're talking about a couple. When would he file? When would she file? If your goal was to maximize your cumulative lifetime benefits throughout your life expectancy. And we'll start there. Now, we're never going to tell you exactly when to file. That's a very personal decision between you and your partner. But it will give you an educated kind of schooling, if you will, about your options in Social Security. And it's a good place to start.
Yeah, it's a good place to start. Yeah, it's we just want everybody out there to, and just by the way, we here at the Wealth Guardians are certified with the National Social Security Association. So as Garrett said, that's one of the cornerstones of most people's income is Social Security. And we just want everybody out there to be making the decision on when they file off of real facts and numbers, not speculation or assumptions or fear or greed, those kind of things as well. So that's another one that we got to consider besides lifestyle is what's my Social Security filing options? Which one makes the most sense for us as a couple in the long term? All right. We've got time for another one here before we go to break. Pensions. Yeah, pensions is another form of income for a lot of people. Not everybody has a pension, but for those who do, another cornerstone for income.
Yeah, I would say it for some people. I don't know about a lot of people anymore, but if you do have a pension, then yes, that's something that we certainly need to understand the different options around your pension. Pensions are interesting. They tend to kind of have their own language. Like you might have heard something called like a portable pension, which is basically the option to take what's more of a traditionally understood as a pension, where when you retire at a certain age, you can file for guaranteed income for the rest of your life. That's the more traditional side. A portable pension has like a lump sum option where instead of exchanging that for a monthly check, you can basically take a lump sum value and roll that out into typically an IRA where you would invest it and basically live off the growth of the lump sum, and you can take income from it at your discretion.
Right. Yeah. Not a monthly guarantee.
Yeah. And so what a lot of our planning does is focus on, okay, let's do some calculations versus if you took it the traditional way versus some assumed rate of return on growth if you took it lump sum, and help people kind of navigate that decision.
Yep. All right. Well, we've got a few more of these to go over. We do have to get to a break here. Thank you for sticking around with us. But we got to go to the trivia question, as we always do. So we'll get the answer on the other side of the break. But here we go, Garrett. October 10th, 1967, the Outer Space Treaty is declared and enforced. What did or does the Outer Space Treaty do? All right. Well, stick around for the answer to that trivia question and see if we stumped Garrett on the other side of this short break. This is Brice Payne. With me is Garrett Ray. The show's The Wealth Guardians, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. And this is News Talk 94.5 WPTI. And this is 96.7 FM WTOB. News Talk 94.5 WPTI. 96.7 FM WTOB. Welcome back to the Wealth Guardian Show, where we continue to help you retire the job and keep the paycheck. I'm Brice Payne in the Wealth Guardian studio, along with Garrett Ray. And in the second segment, we're going to continue our discussion on factors you need to consider when planning for retirement other than your investment accounts. Now, before we answer that trivia question that we left you and Garrett hanging with at the end of the last segment, let me ask you this question. Are you planning to retire? Okay. Have you met yet with a retirement income certified professional who is also a fiduciary? If you have not, then right now I'm inviting you to take us up on a complimentary review of your current retirement situation. As certified retirement planning specialists, we're going to put together a customized written plan with strategies for portfolio allocation, income distribution, Social Security filing, and tax efficiency, with the additional benefit of often reducing both the risk and the fees of your current plan. So if you put aside at least $400,000 and want to take us up on this no cost, no obligation review, here's how you get a hold of us. Pick up the phone, 336-391-3409. That's 336-391-3409, or go to thewealthguardians.com. That's thewealthguardians.com to learn more. Let us show you in black and white how to retire the job while keeping the paycheck. All right. Let's get to that trivia question. Garrett, you've had a minute or two here to think about it. On October 10th, 1967, the Outer Space Treaty is declared in force. Simple question. What did, in simple terms, the Outer Space Treaty do? Or does it do?
Yeah. So you definitely gone deep into the well this time, Brice. I have no clue. I'm going to take an educated guess, and that the Outer Space Treaty is an agreement between different countries on how to regulate, like, I'll call it space junk around the Earth. Like different, satellites and all the stuff that we have that you basically have to keep up with. But right. I think that's probably wrong.
Well, that's an outstanding guess, actually, but that is not the main thing that it does. Now, if it's mentioned in the buy rules, I'm not sure. But really what it does is it declares that outer space and all celestial bodies are common heritage of mankind in general and cannot be claimed by any nation.
Yeah, okay.
So Mars doesn't belong to it. The moon doesn't belong to anybody. Sure. It's just all kind of like the oceans in general, I guess. But I was caught by it. It says all celestial bodies. Well, that would include comets and meteors, right? Yes. But we have talked about, and I know that I'm quite certain that we are exploring how would we mine, meteors that are out there. Well, if all celestial bodies aren't owned by anybody, nobody can claim them. Yeah. Does that mean that they're still free to actually be mined, or would we, or whatever nation, manage to land something and start mining materials from that celestial body? Would they be breaking the Outer Space Treaty?
I possibly could.
All right.
It'd be interesting to know how it's
We have to
enforced.
look into that. If you know the answer to that out there, Garrett would love to hear from you, figure out the answer to that. Well, anyway, if you got the answer correct, very good. I'm not going to dump on Garrett's answer, though. That was a very good one as well. In fact, I would love to think that there actually is something out there that does regulate the satellites that we're putting out there.
Yes.
All right. So continuing our conversation here on factors to consider when planning for retirement other than your investment accounts.
Mm-hmm.
In the first segment, we talked about lifestyle, how much you're spending, Social Security, the best way to file for that, pension, understanding your pension options and what's going to work best for you and your spouse. The next one is home-related issues. And in this, we can talk about downsizing or relocating, home equity lines of credit, reverse mortgages. That is something that a lot of people overlook, that they've got equity built up into a house, and they look at the size of their investment accounts, but they forget that, I've actually got equity built up in the house. There are times when using that equity instead of taking distributions from your accounts when you need income makes more financial mathematical sense for some people. Now, certainly we're not going to give advice over the radio. Everybody's situation is different, but there are times where that makes more sense for somebody to, a reverse mortgage is a loan. It's just a more flexible type of loan. But to use the equity that you've got built up in your home instead of, say, the market is down 30 or 40%, and you normally take out a couple $1,000s a month to supplement your Social Security, there would be times where you would want to leave that account alone, pause your distributions from that, and that could be a time where it mathematically makes sense for you to use a reverse mortgage, assuming the interest rates are correct and all of that. What are your thoughts on home-related issues, Garrett?
Yeah, well, I think, if we're kind of moving away specifically from the reverse mortgage, I mean, I think that's a fairly, I guess, kind of dividing topic. Some people are all about the reverse mortgages. Some people are wholly against them. But to be fair, it is worth at least considering as an option that you do have. But home-related issues in general tend to come up more often than you would think with retirement planning. Are we going to be downsizing? Or are we going to be selling the existing home because, we're empty nesters now? We have adult children. They've moved out. They're on their own. Do we really need the house that we raised the family in anymore? Some people have a vision or a goal to relocate, whether they're moving to the mountains or they're moving to the beach or they're buying the lake house they always wanted. And we'll talk about, planning for families when it comes to, hey, is this possible? Does this make sense? Is this the quote unquote right move to do? But more commonly, even people who just want to kind of stay in their home, they got to maintain their home. So oftentimes they're doing renovations or, hey, the appliances are getting to be 15, 20 years old. We got to replace some of those. And just different expenses of maintaining the home that come up in retirement can be challenging when we have retired from our job and we no longer have a physical paycheck coming in. How do we allocate funds, future funds for just home maintenance? And we help people kind of navigate that as well.
Yeah, it absolutely is something that you have to consider. And something else that people often do with their homes is instead of downsizing, they want to stay in the home that they're at, but they're getting older. Maybe it's a 2 or 3 story building. They start retrofitting the house, whether it's putting a ramp in the front or whatever it is to make it a better living space for you as we become less mobile in our older years. And that's something else that we have to consider and at least know we're going to go this way or that way in all likelihood, even if it's 10 or 20 years down the road. Let's at least kind of get an idea of what we might want to do. If you're just tuning in, you're still listening to the Wealth Guardian Show with Doug Ray, and in the studio this morning is Brice, Payne, and Garrett Ray. And we're talking about factors you need to consider when planning for retirement other than your investment accounts. And Garrett, the next one we want to cover here is health questions. This is a big one. This is one that sometimes we almost, as financial planners, we really have to force the conversation to come out.
Yeah, this one can be tricky in general. Just general healthcare risks as we age. Most people can get well into their 60s without any major health issues. But once we start getting into our late 60s, certainly in our 70s, we tend to start dealing with more health-related issues. The other times where, we sometimes cross this stream of just health issues when it comes to retirement is occasionally, Brice, you and I will sit down with a family who's younger, and they are really excited about quote unquote retiring early. And we would define retiring early as anything earlier than age 65 when you're Medicare qualified.
Okay.
Because then the question becomes, if let's assume it's a couple, both of them are no longer working, they've retired early, they're, let's say, age 60 years old. Congratulations on the early retirement. Now, how are we paying for healthcare insurance? Are we going to the public market? Are we doing some sort of private healthcare insurance solution for 4 or 5 years? So for those of you listeners out there who are thinking about retiring early, or gee, it sounds like it would be great. Yes, it can be great, but how are we going to pay for just basic healthcare needs between when you physically retire from your job and when you reach 65 and you can file for Medicare? So that's something that we can help people with.
Yeah, it is a tricky topic. Just as Garrett said, just because you've been healthy for the first 60 years of your life probably doesn't mean that you're going to be you're going to have no health issues from 60 onward.
Yeah.
Probably just like cars get older, we get older as well. And you've heard me say this before. That is the one area, the one expense that can really sidetrack a retirement plan. No matter how well done it's laid and you've got the numbers, you start having to spend several $1,000s a month for care, either whether it's coming into your home or you're now living somewhere else and that hadn't been a part of your original plan. Yep. That can really throw a curveball at your retirement plan.
Even if you have skilled nursing come to your home, it's still incredibly expensive.
Yeah. Yep. And the tough thing about that is that if you're married and you've put aside, let's just use a round number, $1 million. Well, in your heads, that $1 million is meant for both of you, right?
Right.
And then if one of you has to go into a home at a certain point, and that's now costing $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 a month for a private room, whoever you're paying for that, whether it's out of pocket or whatnot, that money is now being used more or less by one of the people.
Yeah, pretty much.
And it's not for both of the people.
All the retirement assets are going for the care of one.
Yeah. Yep. And so you really want to make sure that you've got that covered. There are some things that you can do to better prepare for that than not doing anything. And the last one that we'll get to here is other gaps, estate planning, tax planning. This is a huge one in my book, tax planning. Mm-hmm. Yes, so many people focus on, I want to get X amount of annual returns on my accounts. That'll make me happy. Okay, well, fine. But you also want to focus on the defensive side of the game too, right? Yep. You want to make sure that you're keeping as much of that growth out of fees and out of taxes, out of Uncle Sam's hands as much as possible. And there's certainly techniques and practices, I don't want to say tricks because they are legit, but there are things that you can do to where in the end you will have paid Uncle Sam a lot less than if you had not had a plan.
Sure. Absolutely.
And the types of accounts that you have, so you put aside $1 million, great. Is that $1 million in a pre-tax account or pre-tax accounts? Mm-hmm. Or is it in Roth accounts? Or is it in non-qualified accounts? All of those accounts are taxed differently, just like Social Security is taxed differently.
Yes.
And you want to make sure that you've got the right balance of all those and that you're taking the distributions from each one of those every year in the right order and to the right amounts. Otherwise, I would wager if I asked everybody out there in Radio Land, raise your hand if you want to pay Uncle Sam more than you have to. I don't think I heard a single hand just now go up.
Nobody.
So everybody wants to. So you really want to make sure that you're planning on paying Uncle Sam as little as possible. And estate planning is another key component of that as well.
Sure. Yeah. If we've got a next generation that we're planning for, or we've got, some care and consideration for brothers, sisters, and certainly adult children, talking about the estate and kind of getting those things that oftentimes we don't like to think about. It's kind of a morbid conversation, but getting your ducks in a row there can certainly bring peace of mind while we're still well and we're still here on this earth.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. That wraps it up for us today. That was factors that you need to consider when planning for retirement outside of your investment accounts. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have this week. So I want to thank you once again for joining us. We hope the rest of your weekend is everything you want it to be. Of course, we hope that your team wins as well. This is Brice Payne, along with Garrett Ray, the show's The Wealth Guardians, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. And I want to remind you, sound financial plans do not create themselves. This is News Talk 94.5 WPTI. This is 96.7 FM WTOB.
Hi, it's Garrett Ray with The Wealth Guardians. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Make sure to check out our weekly series, The Vault, on YouTube. Find our channel, The Wealth Guardians, where we talk about all things retirement planning and cover new topics each week, such as Social Security, tax planning in retirement, and our thoughts on investment best practices, and much more. New episodes air Thursdays at 2 p.m. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications when we release new episodes. We're here to help you retire the job and keep that paycheck. We'll talk soon.